Rich, why do you think women are going to be single and childless, at least half, let's just say, within the next 9 years?
Well, to add to what Aaron's already listed there, which I co-sign, top shelf men are starting to avoid insufferable women. They're starting to realize that the juice ain't worth the squeeze. It's not worth exposing themselves and their wealth to huge amounts of risk, to hashtag boss girls that are, going to make their life difficult after they've been chasing excellence all day long. They come home and, get browbeaten, sort of thing. There's not a lot of incentive anymore to having families and children. I mean, if you look at this, the stats and the way that things have changed and the fabric of, the nuclear family's changed over the century. Mm-hmm. So that leaves a lot of, women out to pasture, to climb the corporate ladder, collect cats and box wine subscriptions and, go globalism, feminism, and all the other isms. And Big Daddy State's, their favorite lover now.
Mm-hmm. George, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you go through and do the math on what most women's expectations are, what their, I don't want to say objectives, but I guess for lack of a better word, we'll say objectives in trying to find a long-term relationship or a husband, they'll list all of these things. Well, the guy's got to be straight. Okay, he's got to be between this age group. Ideally, he'd make this amount of money. He's got to be a leader of men. He's got to pursue excellence. He has to do all these things, And then you go through and say, okay, well, let's just assume that you live in a town of 1 million people. And then you go through and you say, okay, well, how many men are there in this 1 million people? Okay, there's 500,000. Well, how many fall into this age group? Okay, well, now maybe you've got 20,000. And how many of those guys are fit all these other categories? What it boils down to is like 5 or 6, and that's what all the gals want, because again, it goes back to hypergamy. When they're increasing their socioeconomic level, and the guys aren't doing it at the same pace, then there's going to be fewer and fewer and fewer options that fit their checklist of what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. And it's, women can say that's right, wrong. Guys can get pissed off about it. But I think that the powerful message for guys and women is that if guys just go out and do what Rich talks about, it's if you just pursue excellence and you do not pursue women, you're going to have the best of both worlds. And the woman, whatever woman you choose to be a part of your life, is going to have a much, much, much better experience, and the relationship overall is going to be much better. Because at the end of the day, you guys know as well as I do that women, they can say whatever, but they want a guy that's not an asshole or not a prick or anything like that, but a guy that can really take charge, and someone that isn't afraid to make a decision, and someone that is decisive, someone that's a leader of men, and someone that has a high degree of competency and ambition. This is what really women respect in men. And I think that once, a lot of guys fall into the trap, they get married and they think that they don't have to worry about it anymore. Mm-hmm. Because it's till death do us part. So I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to continue to grow my business. I don't have to continue to, achieve 100% of my God-given potential. And then once the gal sees that, mm-hmm. subconsciously, that's the biggest turnoff ever. And, you guys know where it goes from there. So my whole point with the layering over economics is just to point out that I think this trend will continue. And although JP Morgan might have been looking at it from a standpoint of consumption, like consumer goods, mm-hmm. what are they going to consume more? I would look at it from a standpoint of demographics having a real population problem. And in a world and in an economy where you always have to continue to create more debt and more dollars, if you have a decreasing population, that's a big problem. And then what happens is the government steps in and tries to counteract that with, we'll call it printing money, for lack mm-hmm. of a better term. And then you have more money being created, but you have fewer goods and services. And at the end of the day, the wealth of the economy is a measurement of the goods and services it can produce efficiently. You know, I use the example all the time. If you were on a deserted island and you had $1 billion in a chest, you know, would you be rich or poor? You'd be poor because there's nothing to buy. So the amount of dollars in the system doesn't matter. And this takes us to UBI. You know, I think that the part of the problem here is the welfare state. If you go back, because it's allowed women to make decisions that they otherwise wouldn't make. And again, you can say that's good, but you got to look at the cost benefit analysis. It's not just the benefit. There's also a cost involved in any decision where you're dealing with economics, which is really defined by the allocation of scarce resources with alternative uses. You know, and so I think that it's more than just, you know, buying certain things and not buying other things because women are more control over the majority of money being spent. I think it's the fact that this produces an environment where the free market isn't working at full capacity because so many men have been eliminated out of the system. And then you go and combine that with the fact that most of these young boys, you know, that are the future entrepreneurs, as well as the women, but, you know, the guys really getting out there and hustling and driving the economy forward. It's always that top 1% of producers. You know, I think Rich knows that well. And now we're in an environment because of the welfare state where the majority of those young men who are extremely talented, and the young women, but I think this inversely affects men more. They're raised in a single family, you know, or single mother household. And then when they go to school, 95% of the teachers are female. So then they grow up in that environment. And I think that, you know, what does that do to society at large as far as our ability to start businesses, to take risk, to be leaders, to go out there and solve problems, to be ambitious, to create goods and services and compete at a global level. I think it decreases our ability to do that. And the government fills the gap with money printing, which most likely creates consumer price inflation, which I'll save for later in the discussion, because that's what we can go over things that the viewers right now can do to actually protect themselves and maybe build wealth and thrive in kind of this crazy environment that we're moving into.
Yeah.
Just to top up on what George was saying there, I just want to add this because, I mean, this is probably the first time in history ever where we essentially have a gigafactory that makes betas on such a large level.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a lot of men today that aren't even involved with women, period.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say is like it's not just like guys getting into a marriage and then sort of giving up. It's guys giving up on marriage altogether.
Guys giving up on women, and then
they're giving up on women, not even on marriage.
Yeah. And once the guy subconsciously gives up hope that they can pass on their DNA, that's a powder keg right there. And that's
would you got? Can I destroy some hope?
Yeah, go ahead. Destroy some hope, Aaron.
I'm going to destroy. So if there was any remaining, but what George was saying, his primary concern is that obviously humans are the source of all economic production as our population shrinks. It has bad tidings for the future economy. But to put some numbers on, this is why I put together. This is really just an actuarial study, and this is the best statistics I could come up with. To show you how little demand there is on the side of women interested in the average guy. And that's what this, I had to assume a type of guy, a stereotype, just your average guy of 5 and assumptions and all that made. Only 2.9% of women are really interested in your average guy.
Right.
They are more interested in careers, the other things that we've talked about, also sexual attraction as well, if you throw that in there as well. And you have to think about what just a small eye of a needle that puts the future of this particular population through. Like only less than 5% of the women out there are willing to get with, form families with the average guy. And George is right. That's going to have a horrific effect on the future economic production of the United States, or let alone any other country with very low birth rates. And if you think birth rates are low now, just wait. I think it's the first derivative is going to accelerate. Marriage rates, procreation rates, fertility rates, and things like that. But it's already bad now for girls between 18 and 35. And going forward, I can't imagine it being much better. But there is very little demand for the average guy out there. And then I don't know, there's this, hang on, let me see. I got it here somewhere.
And social media exacerbates that problem.
Right,
too.
right.
You guys talked about many times.
But in order to even be in the procreation game, maybe you should read this book. I don't know. Maybe you want to read that book. But you really got to be in a top elite class. So yeah, this is definitely throwing a monkey into the reproductivity, a monkey wrench in the reproductivity machine, and by consequence, the economy in the future.
Yeah. It's I mean, the solution, if you're to able just to wave a magic wand, is for women's standards to lower, or for men to get that much better. And I don't see either of those happening right now, especially
on an evolutionary scale. Women are not going to give that up. That's simply like women look for quality. They don't look for, like, men are looking for quantity. Women look for quality.
Yeah.
And so when that quality is paired with economic attractiveness, like, remember those was as far back as like 2018, 2019. I was doing shows with Pat Campbell back then. We were talking about the research findings, I guess, that showed that, women were not finding guys economically attractive, and that's actually one of the things that I've got on here is the fact that that the idea of, like, say, love or family formation or marriages, for however you want to pair this up, when women are making more money than men, that is something that is, like, on an evolutionary level, on an innate level, on an instinctual level, it's hard for women to accept that, regardless of, unless the guy has something that is really like a 10-inch personality and is really yoked and really, like, satisfies that kind of alpha seed side of hypergamy, there's going to be problems. So when women are in the workforce, and even if a couple starts out making exactly the same amount of money, if that woman gets a bonus, or she gets a raise, or she gets a promotion of some sorts, that is a precipitator of a divorce right there. And because women are looking for a guy who makes more money than them, who has higher value than them, and that higher value takes the form of a lot of different things. And primarily today, in a transactional nature, it's money, it's economics. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why women are going to be more lonely and without children and without marriage. And I think that right now we're kind of looking at a way of justifying that, because we know it's coming down the road.